The Thompson family, Mom, Dad, and little Lily squealed with delight. After years of saving, they were finally homeowners. The house wasn't perfect. It was a little old and the paint was peeling, but it had a big backyard and a swing set just like Lily always wanted. "It's cozy," Dad said, trying to sound enthusiastic, though Mom noticed a slight wrinkle on his forehead. What really made the house special was the price. It was way cheaper than any other house in the neighborhood. Too good to be true, some might say. But the Thompsons were so eager to escape their cramped apartment that they brushed aside any doubts. "It needs a little love," Mom declared, "but we can fix it up." Neighbors, however, offered strange looks and whispered warnings. Mrs. Gable, with her cat perched on her shoulder, said that house has been empty for years for a reason. Old Mr. Henderson, tending his roses, muttered, "Some families just don't leave, even when they're gone." But the Thompsons, blinded by the excitement of owning their own home, paid little attention. They were ready to start their new life, completely unaware that the previous family had never truly moved out. The secrets hidden within those walls were about to be revealed. The Thompson family tried to shake off the unsettling comments from their new neighbors. "They're just old," Dad chuckled, "probably seen too many scary movies." Mom nodded in agreement, but she couldn't help feeling a little uneasy. The low price of the house still seemed like a dream come true. They had imagined painting the walls bright colors, planting flowers in the garden, and filling the rooms with laughter. They pushed aside any lingering doubts and focused on making the house their own. "Let's just unpack and get settled," Mom suggested, clapping her hands together. "The sooner we make it feel like home, the better." But as they started moving boxes inside, they noticed something strange. There were a few pieces of old furniture left behind, a dusty armchair, a wobbly side table, and a chipped mirror. The sellers had promised to remove everything. "That's odd," Dad said, scratching his head. "I'll call them later." They also found some forgotten belongings in the attic, a box of old photographs, a stack of yellowed letters, and a child's worn-out teddy bear. These unexpected discoveries added to the growing sense of unease. It felt like the previous family hadn't just moved out, they had vanished. Despite finding the forgotten furniture and unsettling belongings, the Thompsons pressed on. Dad tried calling the previous owners, but the number was disconnected. He shrugged it off. "Probably just forgot," he said to Mom, who was carefully wiping down the chipped mirror. Lily, meanwhile, was exploring the backyard. She loved the swing set and spent hours pumping her legs, soaring through the air. But even in the bright sunshine, she felt a strange chill. She kept glancing back at the house as if someone was watching her from the windows. That evening, after a dinner of takeout pizza eaten amidst unpacked boxes, the Thompsons settled in for the night. Lily insisted on sleeping with her parents, claiming she heard scratchy noises in her room. As darkness fell, the house seemed to come alive. Creaks and groans echoed through the hallways. The floorboards protested with every step. A window rattled upstairs, even though there was no wind. Mom and Dad tried to reassure each other that it was just an old house settling. But the noises grew louder, more persistent. And then, they heard it. A faint whisper, like someone calling Lily's name. The whisper sent shivers down Mom's spine. "Did you hear that?" she asked, clutching Dad's arm. Dad, trying to remain calm, shook his head. "It's probably just the wind," he said, though he didn't sound convinced. But Lily, nestled between them, piped up. "It was the sad lady," she said, her voice small and trembling. "The sad lady?" Mom asked, exchanging worried glances with Dad. "Who's the sad lady, sweetie?" "She's in my room," Lily explained. "She's always there, watching me. She's very sad." Mom and Dad tried to reassure Lily that it was just a bad dream, but they couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. The house felt colder, heavier, as if they were sharing it with an unseen presence. The next morning, Lily refused to go back into her room. She clung to Mom's leg, her eyes wide with fear. "She doesn't want me there," she whispered. "She wants her room back." That's when Mom and Dad realized they couldn't ignore the strange occurrences any longer. They had to figure out who or what was haunting their new home. They decided to start with the forgotten belongings in the attic, hoping to find some clues about the previous family and the sad lady who seemed to be calling Lily's name. Armed with a flashlight, Dad led the way up the creaky attic stairs. Dust motes danced in the beam of light, illuminating forgotten boxes and cobweb-draped furniture. Mom followed close behind, holding Lily's hand tightly. The air in the attic was thick with the smell of old paper and musty wood. It felt like stepping back in time. They carefully opened the box of old photographs. Black and white images showed a smiling family, a mother, a father, and a little girl about Lily's age. "Look, Lily, she looks just like you." Mom exclaimed, pointing to the girl in one of the pictures. Lily stared at the photo, her eyes wide with recognition. "That's her," she whispered. "That's the sad lady when she was little." They sifted through the stack of yellowed letters. They were addressed to the mother, Sarah, from a man named Thomas. The letters spoke of love, dreams, and a happy future. But the last few letters were filled with sadness and worry. Thomas wrote about Sarah's illness and his fear of losing her. A chill ran down Mom's spine. She looked around the attic, feeling a presence watching them. The air grew colder, and the shadows seemed to deepen. Suddenly, a gust of wind slammed the attic window shut, plunging them into near darkness. Lily screamed and clung to her mother. Something was definitely not right in this house. Dad quickly fumbled for the flashlight and shone it around the attic. Nothing. Just dust and shadows. "It's okay, sweetie," he said, trying to soothe Lily. "It was just the wind. Let's go downstairs." They hurried out of the attic, their hearts pounding. The house felt oppressive, filled with secrets they were only beginning to uncover. That night, Lily had a terrible nightmare. She woke up screaming, her face wet with tears. She was there, she cried, pointing to the corner of the room. The sad lady was standing right there. Mom and Dad rushed to comfort her, but Lily was inconsolable. She described the sad lady in detail, her long, dark hair, her pale face, and her sad, watery eyes. She said the sad lady was reaching out to her, whispering something she couldn't understand. Mom and Dad exchanged worried glances. They knew Lily had a vivid imagination, but the details she provided were too specific, too real. They couldn't dismiss it as just a bad dream. "Maybe we should talk to Mrs. Gable," Mom suggested. "She seemed to know something about this house." Dad hesitated. He didn't want to involve the neighbors or spread rumors. But Lily's fear was growing, and they were running out of explanations. They needed to find out the truth, no matter how unsettling it might be. The sad lady was becoming more real with each passing day. The next morning, Mom mustered her courage and walked next door to Mrs. Gable's house. Mrs. Gable, with her ever-present cat, welcomed her inside with a knowing smile. "I suppose you've come about the house," she said, offering Mom a cup of tea. Mom nodded, her voice trembling slightly. "We've been hearing noises, and my daughter, Lily, keeps seeing a sad lady." Mrs. Gable sighed, stroking her cat. "That would be Sarah. She lived in that house with her husband, Thomas, and their daughter, Emily. It was a happy family once." She went on to tell the Thompsons a story about the previous family. Sarah had fallen ill and died in the house many years ago. Shortly after her death, Thomas and Emily disappeared without a trace. The house had been empty ever since, except for the occasional renter who never stayed long. "People say Sarah never left," Mrs. Gable whispered. "That she's still searching for her family." Mom felt a chill run down her spine. It all made sense now, the forgotten belongings, the strange noises, Lily's visions. They weren't just dealing with an old house, they were dealing with a ghost. "What happened to Thomas and Emily?" Mom asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Mrs. Gable shook her head sadly. "No one knows. Some say they moved away heartbroken. Others say something terrible happened in that house." Returning home, Mom shared everything she had learned with Dad. They were both deeply troubled. The idea of a ghost searching for her lost family was heartbreaking. They had to do something to help Sarah find peace. Meanwhile, Lily had started drawing pictures of the sad lady. At first, they were simple sketches of a woman with long hair and sad eyes. But as the days passed, the drawings became more detailed, more vivid. In one drawing, Lily depicted the sad lady, standing in front of a fireplace, pointing to a loose brick. In another, she drew the sad lady holding a bouquet of lilies, standing next to a specific window. Mom and Dad were amazed by the details in Lily's drawings. They seemed to be more than just childish imaginings. They were clues, leading them to something important. Following Lily's drawings, they examined the fireplace and found a loose brick, just as Lily had drawn. Behind it was a small wooden box. And next to the window Lily had indicated, they found a hidden compartment containing a faded diary. It seemed that Lily, somehow, was communicating with Sarah, and her drawings were helping them piece together the puzzle of the previous family's disappearance. The secrets of the house were slowly being revealed, one drawing at a time. The Thompsons carefully opened the wooden box. Inside, they found a small, silver locket and a faded photograph of Sarah and Emily. The locket was engraved with the initials S.T. While Mom stayed home with Lily, Dad went to the local library to research the history of the house and the previous family. He spent hours poring over old newspapers and town records. He discovered a tragic story. Sarah had indeed died from a long illness, leaving Thomas heartbroken. But the newspapers also reported that Thomas and Emily had disappeared shortly after Sarah's death. The case was never solved and the house had remained empty ever since. The old newspaper articles hinted at suspicion falling on Thomas, suggesting he might have been involved in Emily's disappearance. But there was no evidence to support the claims. Dad returned home, his face pale. He shared the information with Mom. They now knew the full story of the previous family, and it was even more heartbreaking than they had imagined. They realized that Sarah wasn't just searching for her family, she was searching for the truth. She wanted to know what happened to Thomas and Emily, and she needed their help to find out. The diary and the locket were just the beginning. They were determined to uncover the secrets hidden within the walls of their new home and bring peace to Sarah's restless spirit. That evening, they decided to try and communicate with Sarah. They sat in the living room, holding hands, and spoke to the empty space. "Sarah," Mom said softly, "we know you're here. We know you're looking for your family. We want to help you." The air grew cold, and a faint whisper echoed through the room. Lily, who was sitting on Mom's lap, pointed to the diary. "She wants you to read it," she said. They carefully opened the faded diary and began to read. It was Sarah's diary, filled with her thoughts and feelings about her life, her family, and her illness. The early entries were filled with joy and happiness. Sarah wrote about her love for Thomas and her adoration for Emily. She described their picnics in the park, their bedtime stories, and their dreams for the future. But as the diary progressed, the entries became more somber, more fearful. Sarah wrote about her growing illness and her worries about leaving her family. She expressed her fear of the unknown and her sadness at the thought of never seeing Emily grow up. The last few entries were frantic and desperate. Sarah wrote about a growing tension between her and Thomas. She suspected he was hiding something from her, but she didn't know what it was. The final entry ended abruptly with the words, "I'm afraid." The Thompsons looked at each other, their hearts heavy. They knew they were getting closer to the truth. But they were also uncovering a dark and unsettling secret. Driven by the diary's unsettling final entry, the Thompsons continued their investigation. Lily, guided by the sad lady, led them to a hidden room in the basement, behind a stack of old boxes. Inside the room, they found more of the family's belongings. Old toys, clothes, and books. It was as if the room had been frozen in time, untouched since the day Thomas and Emily disappeared. Among the belongings, they found a locked wooden chest. They tried to open it, but it was firmly sealed. Lily once again pointed to one of her drawings. It showed the sad lady holding a key, hidden inside Emily's teddy bear. They searched Emily's teddy bear and, sure enough, found a small, rusty key. With trembling hands, Dad inserted the key into the lock of the wooden chest and turned it. The chest creaked open, revealing its contents, a collection of Thomas's letters, a legal document, and a small, velvet pouch. The letters were addressed to a woman named Eleanor, revealing a secret affair. The legal document was a life insurance policy taken out on Sarah shortly before her death. And the velvet pouch contained a single, dried lily. The Thompsons stared at the contents of the chest, their hearts pounding. The truth was finally coming to light, and it was more shocking and tragic than they could have ever imagined. It seemed Thomas had a motive for wanting Sarah gone, and the dried lily was a cruel reminder of her favorite flower. The Thompsons knew they couldn't keep this information to themselves. They had to bring the truth to light and help Sarah find peace. They contacted the local police and shared their findings. The police were skeptical at first, but after examining the evidence and hearing Lily's story, they agreed to reopen the case. The police investigation led them to Thomas's former business partner, who revealed that Thomas had been deeply in debt and desperate for money. The life insurance policy on Sarah would have solved all his problems. The police searched the house again, this time with a new perspective. They found traces of poison in Sarah's old medicine bottles, confirming that she hadn't died of natural causes. But the biggest breakthrough came when they followed up on the lead about Eleanor, Thomas's mistress. Eleanor, now an elderly woman, confessed that Thomas had told her he had sent Emily to live with relatives out of state. But Eleanor always suspected something more sinister had happened. Faced with the overwhelming evidence, the police finally located Thomas, who was living under an assumed name in another state. He initially denied everything, but eventually he confessed to poisoning Sarah and abandoning Emily in a foster home, fearing she would reveal his secret. The truth was finally out, and Sarah's spirit could finally rest. Thomas was brought to justice for his crimes, and Emily, now a grown woman, was finally reunited with her mother's memory. With the mystery solved and justice served, the Thompsons felt a deep connection to the previous family. They decided to honor their memory by cleaning up the house and sharing their story with the town. They carefully cleaned the attic, dusting off the old furniture and arranging the family's belongings in a respectful manner. They framed the old photographs and displayed them on the mantelpiece. They planted lilies in the garden, Sarah's favorite flower. They also reached out to the local newspaper and shared the story of Sarah, Thomas, and Emily. The newspaper published an article about the tragic events, bringing closure to the community and honoring the memory of the lost family. The townspeople were grateful to the Thompsons for uncovering the truth and bringing justice to Sarah. They organized a memorial service for Sarah and Emily, and many people attended to pay their respects. As the Thompsons worked to restore the house and honor the previous family, they felt a sense of peace and fulfillment. They knew they had done the right thing, and they had helped Sarah find the rest she deserved. The house no longer felt haunted, but filled with love and warmth. It was finally a home. Lily played a special role in bringing peace to the house. She remembered the diary entry about Sarah's love for lilies and insisted on leaving a fresh bouquet of lilies in Sarah's old bedroom every day. "She likes them," Lily would say, smiling. "She says thank you." Mom and Dad watched Lily with a mixture of wonder and gratitude. They knew that Lily's connection to Sarah was something special, something they couldn't fully understand. As the days passed, the strange occurrences in the house gradually stopped. The creaking noises faded away, the whispers disappeared, and the cold spots vanished. The house felt warm and welcoming, filled with love and laughter. One evening, as Lily was arranging the lilies in Sarah's room, she turned to Mom and said, "She's happy now, Mommy. She's with Emily." Mom hugged Lily tightly, her eyes filled with tears. She knew that Sarah had finally found peace, and they had played a part in bringing her home. The Thompsons continued to live in the house, creating their own happy memories. They never forgot Sarah, Thomas, and Emily, and they always honored their memory. The house, once filled with tragedy and secrets, was now a symbol of hope, healing, and the power of love. They had bought a house for cheap, but they had gained something priceless, a connection to the past and a future filled with peace. Now, years later, the Thompson house stands as a testament to their compassion and bravery. The garden flourishes with lilies, a constant reminder of Sarah and the family they helped bring to peace. Emily, now a grandmother herself, often visits the Thompsons. She shares stories of her mother, keeping her memory alive for future generations. She considers the Thompsons her family, bound together by the shared experience of uncovering the truth. The Thompsons often reflect on their decision to buy the old, cheap house. They realize it wasn't just a coincidence. They were meant to find that house, meant to uncover its secrets, and meant to bring peace to Sarah's restless spirit. They learned that sometimes the greatest treasures are hidden in the most unexpected places, and that even the most tragic stories can have a happy ending thanks to the power of love, compassion, and the unwavering spirit of a little girl named Lily. The house is no longer just a house, it's a home filled with laughter, love, and the comforting knowledge that they made a difference in the lives of others, even those they never met. They proved that even though some families might seem to never leave, peace can always be found. The faint whispers of the past are replaced with happy chatter and the bright sounds of life being lived to the fullest. The moonlight streams through Lily's window, now adorned with a dream catcher Emily gifted her. Lily, now a young woman herself, often sits by the window reflecting on the sad lady who changed their lives. She knows that Sarah's spirit watches over them, grateful for their kindness and courage. Mom and Dad often tell the story of the haunted house to their grandchildren, emphasizing the importance of compassion, empathy, and standing up for what is right. They hope that their grandchildren will learn from their experience and carry on the legacy of kindness and understanding. The old house, once a source of fear and mystery, is now a haven of peace and love. The Thompsons have created a warm and welcoming home, filled with laughter, joy, and the comforting presence of family and friends. They often think about the neighbors who warned them about the house. They understand their apprehension but are grateful they didn't let fear deter them. They believe that some things are worth facing even if they seem scary at first. And so, the story of the Thompson family and the haunted house continues to be told. A reminder that even in the darkest of times, hope and love can always prevail. They bought a house for cheap, but they received a priceless gift. The opportunity to make a difference and to bring peace to a family that had been lost for far too long. They built a life founded on kindness, proving that even the most haunted places can become havens of love.